apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here on a Tuesday, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. How about those Cincinnati Reds? They have me hooked again. I'm a sucker for a 5-game win streak, let me tell you. The Reds have me hooked again. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means I'm back into thinking it's a playoff team. I don't know if it's back to me thinking I think they could win this division or not, but they have my interest again. They're fun to watch. And again, we talked yesterday about the fact that this team is so dang inconsistent that it's really, really hard to fall for the high of highs, but we do have a habit of always falling for the low of lows. And I think that there has to be some kind of middle ground. And you want to know what that middle ground is called? It's called 500. 500 baseball, that's the middle ground. If you're playing 500 baseball, which the Cincinnati Reds are, and the 7-1 win last night over the Pirates in Game 1, by the way. They've won 5 straight. They avoided the sweep against the White Sox by winning Game 3. They go on to win 3 straight over the Guardians to pull off the sweep against Cleveland at Great American Ballpark. And then last night, it took quite a few innings to get rolling, but man, oh man, did they figure it out, because they really laid it on the Pirates late in that one. 7 runs on 12 hits. No home runs last night. It was just small ball. It was a lot of extra base hits. A lot of their core guys getting multiple hits, multi-hit games last night galore. Ellie De La Cruz, TJ Friedel, Gavin Lux, Austin Hayes, and we even saw the National League Player of the Month, or Player of the Week, I should say, in Will Benson also get an extra base hit last night too, helping the Reds cause get a win for Nick Lodolo and company last night. So the Reds keep it going. They keep us hooked. They keep us interested, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. To open up the show, we are going to hear from Marty Brennaman, former voice of the Reds, Hall of Famer, coming up here in a bit. Had a chance to catch up with him earlier today, and we'll have that conversation for you. We discussed his thoughts on the handling of the Pete Rose situation by Major League Baseball. Pete, when it comes to Marty, obviously Marty Brennaman has let his voice and opinion be heard in regards to this team for quite some time, in regards to the handling of Pete Rose for quite some time. So coming up later on in the show, we'll have that for you. Marty Brennaman on the show with us again, talking Pete Rose, talking about the Reds playoff chances. We'll get to all of that coming up later on in the program. As well. Now you're probably saying, what Marty talking about the Reds playoff chances? He might surprise you with his take on his outlook for the Reds and what it means, when it comes to the playoffs. So again, that's coming up here in just a little bit later on in the program. But Marty was Marty as always, and gave us a good 33 minutes on the show. So we'll have that coming up for you here around the corner. But yes, the Reds come away with the win. They've won 5 straight. They have me hooked again. I don't know how many of you they have hooked once more. But as I said, we have a habit of, we dismiss the highs of highs, but we always buy into the lows of lows, which is just crazy to me. I don't know if it's a defense mechanism to keep us from getting hurt by our favorite team again. I don't know what it is. But when we see our team play really, really well, we have a habit of not wanting to give them the full credit for it. But my goodness, if they have an off game, if they lose tonight 3-0, we will put more stock in a 3-0 shutout loss tonight than watching what the Reds have done over this 5-game span. Now, I'm seeing it already. Ron Howard says they're supposed to beat teams like Pittsburgh. You mean like the White Sox, where they dropped 2 or 3? They got their head out of their behinds and then decided to, avoid getting swept by the White Sox to go and sweep Cleveland. And they made Pittsburgh look like they were a lesser than opponent last night. I know what you're saying, Ron. They're supposed to beat teams like Pittsburgh, but teams like Pittsburgh have also been some of the bigger Achilles heels for the Cincinnati Reds team, especially in recent history. The Reds, we don't talk, Kevin and I used to joke all the time about what a trap game is. A trap game is not an opinion. A trap game is a game that you are going up against an opponent that is lesser than you, not as talented as you, and that opponent is coming right before you face a super talented, very important opponent. And that's what the Reds have in the Cubs coming up this weekend. Baseball, we never talk about trap games. And I think that this Pirates series is what I would consider a trap series. You were reaching the lower lows. You dropped the first 2 games to the White Sox. You lose the series to the White Sox, probably the second or third worst team in baseball. But the mental toughness of the Reds for them to bounce back and avoid the sweep in Game 3 and then to sweep the Guardians at Great American Ballpark over the weekend, to me, that speaks volumes about the mental toughness of this team. They are inconsistent. That does need to be ironed out. But the mental toughness, to me, as long as they have the pitching and the mental toughness to bounce back, 162-game season, not every night, not every series is going to go your way. It's just whether or not you are going to let those games and series that don't go your way, if you're going to let that hijack your morale, it's going to be a long season. I've seen the mental toughness of this team. I respect the mental toughness of this team, and we're seeing it on display right now. But the bottom line is at the end of the day, for the Cincinnati Reds to really get where they have to go, they have to make sure that they are as mentally prepared for the Chicago Cubs as possible. And the only thing standing in their way is a series against an opponent that they could easily overlook. Ron says, well, it's the Pirates. You're supposed to beat the Pirates. You are. But if you are so fixated on the Chicago Cubs series, which is coming up this weekend, starts Friday night, Game 1, Hunter Green making his return. We'll talk more about that in a moment, the significance of that. But they could easily be overlooking the Pirates. And last night, what that showed me is that they didn't. This bullpen is taxed. It's worn out. And the fact that Nick Lodolo, look, all starting pitchers face pressure of, okay, I need to go as deep into this ball game as possible to help alleviate the bullpen a little bit, especially with how much it's been used as of late. You know, they used an opener game in Game 2 against the Guardians, and they were able to prevail and come away with the win. You know, they were trying not to throw out Chase Petty to get beat up again, so they went the opener route, and it was successful. But they did use a lot of their main bullpen pieces, and they were able to use some of those pieces again last night. These arms are getting tired. I thought it was a humongous performance from Nick Lodolo to go as deep into the ballgame as he did. Now, just like Ron said, well, you're supposed to beat teams like the Pirates. Just like in a very similar statement, well, Nick Lodolo, you're supposed to go deep into ball games. They're supposed to, and he did. Nick Lodolo, my biggest concern for Lodolo coming into the season was, okay, he's always really, really good for the first 3 or 4 starts in the month of April, and then he disappears. He becomes fragile. He gets hurt. He doesn't bounce back from injuries very well or very quickly. To his credit, knock on wood, he's been very, very effective 2 months into the season and has been a major contributor in the absence of Hunter Green. Hunter Green will miss a total of 3 starts, and I'm not really sure if we even noticed that he was gone. That speaks volumes. That doesn't mean that he's not needed or doesn't mean that he has not made an impact. That just speaks volumes about the depth that this team has with its pitching. The Reds were able to avoid the sweep against the White Sox because of pitching. They were able to sweep the Guardians because of their pitching. Their pitching last night saved them again. I mean, they put 7 runs up, but they put a lot of those runs up late in that game. Nick Lodolo was fantastic, and now Nick Martinez is going to have an opportunity to keep his little hot streak going. Nick Martinez has been very, very good for the Cincinnati Reds as well, and we'll see if he can keep it going later on tonight. The lineups are out for tonight's Game 2 against the Pirates. Again, the Reds with a 1-0 series lead already, and they'll look to go up 2-0 over the Pirates. And imagine if they have a chance to close this series out in Pittsburgh at PNC tomorrow with the potential sweep, with an off day coming up on Thursday and Game 1 against the Chicago Cubs on Friday. This is a trap series. Okay, we talk about trap games in football and basketball all the time. This is a trap series in baseball. They can't overlook the Pirates. I know they're excited about the chance to go at the Cubs to kind of close the gap between them and the Cubs sitting atop the division. They can only do that, though, if you continue to take care of business. While they were beating up on the Pirates last night, the Cubs somehow, some way lost last night after having a pretty solid lead late in that game. And so the Reds win, the Cubs lose. They make up an entire game, not just in the division, but the wild card as well. Nick Martinez on the mound tonight. Starting lineup for your Cincinnati Reds. We do get to see Jose Trevino back in the lineup, by the way. Here's the full lineup. TJ Frieda will bat leadoff and get the start in center field. Espinal will get the start at third and bat second. Batting third and at shortstop, Elly De La Cruz, who had a big multi-hit night last night, multiple RBIs. We'll talk about his performance here shortly. Batting fourth and in left field, Austin Hayes. Having Austin Hayes hitting behind Elly De La Cruz just does so much for this lineup, and we've seen it since Austin Hayes has returned. Spencer Steer will continue to play at first base, and he'll bat fifth. Batting sixth, the designated hitter will be Tyler Stevenson. Behind the plate tonight, batting seventh, Jose Trevino. And then, of course, Matt McClain will bat 8th and get the start at second base with Joe in right field batting 9th. One more time, your lineup here for tonight, Game 2 against the Pirates. You'll catch that right here on 1410 ESPN Radio, a 6:40 first pitch time with 6:10 pregame coverage beginning. Frito, Espinal, De La Cruz, your 1, 2, and 3 hitters. Hayes, Steer, and Stevenson, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, 8, and 9, your hitters. Trevino, Matt McClain, and Joe. Nick Martinez will be on the mound. Brady Singer will have a chance to be on the mound tomorrow afternoon for a 12:35 first pitch and a chance to close out this series. And what we hope will be not just a series win, but maybe back-to-back sweeps. I mean, how about that for potential momentum heading in to that series with the Cubs coming up on Friday? All right, we got a lot to get into when it does come to your Cincinnati Reds. We'll have our conversation with Marty Brennaman coming up later on in the show. As I mentioned, Marty Brennaman, we caught up with him earlier today. We talked about his thoughts on Pete Rose being reinstated back into baseball, what it was like being on the field, Great American Ballpark on Pete Rose night last week, honoring the Hit King with Pete Rose's family, some of his closest friends. Marty Brennaman emceed that very event, and we'll talk with him about that, plus a lot of other fun stuff. Again, from our conversation with him earlier on today, our conversation with Marty Brennaman coming up here just around the corner. Another big name from Cincinnati also addressed the media earlier this afternoon as well, and that was none other than, well, everyone's favorite quarterback, maybe not mine, but Mr. Joseph Lee Burrow. We'll talk about Joe Burrow as he addressed the media earlier this afternoon, and we have a couple audio pieces. Of course, he was asked about Trey Hendrickson. He was asked about the scheduling. Joe Burrow, not a fan of having to go to play Baltimore on primetime. Once again, he weighed in on that. Plus, he's big on helping grow the game internationally. Joe Burrow had a lot of interesting things to say when he addressed the media earlier this afternoon. And we pulled some of the most interesting clips from his presser, and we have that coming up for you next. More of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers when we return. All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman joined us earlier today, and we'll have that interview coming up for you here later on in the show. Talked all things Pete Rose, talked about the tear that Will Benson is on currently, and, well, how do the Reds stack up in the NL Central? Does the Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman actually think that this team is good enough to make the postseason? His answer might surprise you. We have that coming up for you here in just a little bit. Joe Burrow, quarterback for your Cincinnati Bengals, was supposed to address the media last week. Last week was a noisy week for the Cincinnati Bengals, but it was especially because of Trey Hendrickson. Now, Trey Hendrickson, things kind of got a little quiet on that front for a bit, and then there was stuff that came out from Adam Schefter, Kelsey Conway, and others that things weren't as smooth behind the scenes as what some rumors were indicating. There's a lot of fake reports that were coming out saying that the Bengals were close to a deal with Trey Hendrickson. Well, that cannot be further from the truth. Trey Hendrickson and his team came out last week and basically let it leak that there has absolutely been zero communication between both parties since the draft. So Hendrickson's frustrated. More reports keep coming out about what the Bengals are willing to offer him and give him contract-wise. It's not as if the Bengals don't want to give him an extension. It's just they don't want to marry him long-term. It's all the hold-up on all of course, the guarantees and the I's that need dotted and the T's that need crossed. Stuff that we don't technically necessarily care about, but at the end of the day, whatever it is, it's leading to the hold-up. And that's what's going on here, when it comes to that for the time being. So, it was a little noisy, and Jay Morrison with Sports Illustrated came on last week. He was supposed to come on to talk about the Burrow presser, but there was no Burrow presser, we think, because of all the noise going on with Hendrickson. But Joe Burrow had a lot to say. He was asked, of course, about the Bengals' schedule. He was asked about some of his issues with the schedule. He was asked about Trey Hendrickson. He covered a lot. And while we're here, I was not on last week when the schedule came out for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think we all know how important the schedule for the Cincinnati Bengals is, especially in the month of September, because the Bengals are coming off of back-to-back seasons where they've missed the playoffs. The Bengals are also coming off back-to-back seasons where slow starts in the month of September are really what you could circle and say, hey, yeah, that's where things went south. Now, you could say, well, 2 years ago they missed it because of Joe Burrow's injury. Well, when you win 9 games and you miss the playoffs by a game, I think I'm going to look at the games that Joe Burrow played in and failed and say, well, Joe Burrow also was the quarterback for the games that they lost in September when they were 1-3 in 2023. He played a big part in that. Joe Burrow played a big part in why they were 1-3 last year. Joe Burrow did finish the season with over 4,700 yards, 40 touchdowns, a career high completion percentage, and probably would have been higher up on the MVP chain if the Cincinnati Bengals were actually a playoff contender. They missed the playoffs again for the second straight season by a game, finishing the season 9-7. So although they're missing the playoffs, they're still winning football games. They're still playing above 500 football. I said 9-7, sorry, 9-8. But either way. So the month of September is very, very crucial, very, very important. The Cincinnati Bengals will open up the season on September 7th on the road at Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Browns are a mess. They don't even know who their quarterback is. I mean, when you want to talk about a quarterback controversy with the team, they're going up against a team that it's not about, is it going to be this guy or this guy in Cleveland? It's controversy of, is it going to be this guy or this guy or this guy or this guy or this guy? 4 to 5 characters in this QB room, and no one is head and shoulders better than the guy next to him to fully 100% say and guarantee you know who the starter is going to be. Cleveland has their own loud, messy offseason that they have to navigate through, but they do have a side of the ball that has been the Achilles heel for the Cincinnati Bengals in recent years, and that's just how good their defense has been. And they did beat up on the Browns on the tail end of last year when Cleveland had basically thrown in the towel. I don't think that's going to be the case. Cleveland's going to come out swinging. That's going to be a tough game for them, whether you guys want to admit it or not. It's just true. They will take on the Jacksonville Jaguars at Paycor. It's their only home game in the month of September. They'll take on Jacksonville for a 1 p.m. kickoff on September 14th, and then a 1 p.m. kickoff week 3 on the road at Minnesota. And then they'll be on the road again in week 4 for a Sunday night football matchup going up against the Denver Broncos. So Browns, Jags, Vikings, and Broncos. That's the 4 teams that, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals are going to open up with. Now, you want to talk about primetime opportunities. The Bengals will have a primetime game with, of course, the Broncos on September 29th at 8 p.m., 8:15 p.m. kickoff. They will also have the Steelers in week 7, an 8:15 p.m. kickoff, and then you continue going down the list. They have quite a few. November 27th, the 8:20 kickoff time against the Baltimore Ravens. It's a Thursday night game. Joe Burrow not happy about having to go and play Baltimore on the road for another season like he's done the last 2. Here's Joe Burrow talking about the conflicts and the concerns he has regarding the Bengals schedule.
Playing in Baltimore for the 4th straight primetime year isn't ideal. Maybe we could get one of those in Cincinnati next year, please. Maybe an international game next year too. I think, part of the reason I wanted to do the quarterback show, I wanted to help grow the game internationally, and so to not have a stage like that is a little disappointing because I feel like I've consciously worked hard to try to grow the game internationally over the last 18 months or so. So hopefully at some point in my career, we can go over there.
That being said,
he starts off whining right off the bat.
Playing in Baltimore for the 4th straight primetime year isn't ideal. Maybe we could get one of those in Cincinnati next year.
Maybe you could win one of those. Maybe. Have you ever thought about that, Joey B? Have you ever thought about making the playoffs, at least once over the last couple of seasons? Have you thought about maybe beating Baltimore? You haven't done that in a while. You lost both of them last season. You lost the year before that. Joe Burrow's whining an awful lot about the schedule. Like, beat Baltimore. It's just kind of one of those, like, Joe Burrow and the Bengals, like, the Bengals fans have this weird, like, oh man, like we're a victim constantly, when really the league rewards winning. The league rewards, individual rewarded quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson are going to get a lot of primetime games, a lot more primetime games on their home field because those are 2 MVPs in the league. Patrick Mahomes is going to get a lot of those primetime games at home. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. Okay, they're going to get a ton of primetime home games. Why? Because the league's going to reward winners. They're going to reward guys who win individual rewards and win Super Bowls and win their division and get to the playoffs. The Bengals haven't been to the playoffs in 2 years. Joe Burrow doesn't have any individual awards. He's not an MVP quarterback. He's a quarterback of a team that's missed the playoffs the last 2 years. So when you talk about, it's not for 4 straight times now, we have to play the Ravens in primetime, in Baltimore. Yes, I think Lamar Jackson deserves that. A multi-time MVP, a 2-time NFL MVP. Baltimore continuously winning that division and continue the most consistent team in that division. Yes, that's going to, of course, Lamar and the Ravens are going to get that favor. What have the Bengals done to earn the respect from the league to get any kind of favor? Joe Burrow has not won anything. Joe Burrow's biggest win was a loss in the Super Bowl. Like, let's not overcomplicate this. There have been quarterbacks that have been way more successful, big picture, than that from his own draft class. When you look at the fact that Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls, and look at the fact that he has outplayed Patrick Mahomes in both of those Super Bowls, when you look at the fact that he won this most recent Super Bowl, and when you look at the fact that he is a Super Bowl MVP, yes, Jalen Hurts is going to get more favorable primetime games than a Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts has won something. Lamar Jackson has won multiple MVPs. He's going to get favorable home schedules on primetime games because he's won multiple MVPs. The Buffalo Bills, same thing. They're going to get home primetime games. Why? Because you have a quarterback that is must-see, that has won an MVP, that is more consistent, that doesn't miss games, that is reliable. When they put Josh Allen in primetime games, they know he's going to be there because he doesn't miss games. The amount of more reliable winning quarterbacks than Joe Burrow in the league is continuing to pile up. And that's why I said last year, when it came down to the Jalen Hurts and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, that if everyone wanted to hate on the Chiefs, I'm like, the worst thing that can happen to Joe Burrow's legacy and the perception of Joe Burrow is the Eagles winning and Jalen Hurts playing well. It wasn't just that the Eagles won, it's that Jalen Hurts played so well, he won Super Bowl MVP. And he's outperformed. And the other title that Joe Burrow always seems to get is, man, they're just the team that has the Chiefs figured out. That's the quarterback. Joe Burrow's the only quarterback that doesn't fear going up against Patrick Mahomes. I'm here to tell you, Jalen Hurts has, every time they go head-to-head with the Chiefs, Jalen Hurts has always outplayed Patrick Mahomes. and blew Patrick Mahomes out in the Super Bowl. Won Super Bowl MVP. Like, I could do this all afternoon when it comes to this particular thing. Like, Joe Burrow whining.
Playing in Baltimore for the 4th straight primetime year isn't ideal. Maybe we could get one of those in Cincinnati next year, please.
Please. Begging? I mean, begging? Can we please have a home primetime game? Can you please be Baltimore? Can you please win an MVP yourself? Can you please make the playoffs? How about that? Can you please beg your front office to start putting a defense out on the field instead of begging them to continue to give you fantasy football lineups with having Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? You got what you wanted, and you've missed the playoffs twice. So I don't get it. Trey Green on Facebook says Joe Burrow won the AFC Championship and has been to 2. That's fantastic. He's been to 2. He's lost one of those, went to the Super Bowl, lost the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been to 2 NFC Championship games, won both of those. I mean, Joe Burrow, you hear it in the show open, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, he's the least accomplished of them all. Like, he has accomplished less than Josh Allen. He has accomplished less than Lamar Jackson. He has accomplished less than Jalen Hurts. He has accomplished less than Patrick Mahomes. And if the Chargers ever figure their mess out, he's in danger of falling behind to Justin Herbert this upcoming season. And if Jaden Daniels, heaven forbid, takes the Commanders to that next level, or he wins an MVP this year, that's another quarterback. The list of quarterbacks that keep surpassing Joe Burrow in the accomplishment department continues to pile up more and more and more. Trey Green also on the Justin Kidder Show Facebook page says, Lamar Jackson hasn't Ben Allen, or won the AFC to even go to the Super Bowl. That's fantastic that you made it to the AFC Championship game and won it that season. That's a huge accomplishment. But if your biggest career accomplishment is losing in a Super Bowl, guy, I don't know what you want me to say to that. Give me Josh Allen. He just won an MVP. He is out there every single week. He doesn't miss games. He is reliable. He doesn't need a Jamar Chase or T. Higgins to go be great. He just won an MVP without a true elite number 1 wide receiver. Oh, Shakir, he runs great. He runs great routes. Okay, that's fine. I'm not saying he has scrubs at wide receiver, but he doesn't have the elite 2 number 1 wide receivers that Joe Burrow has. Like, give me a break. Oh, well, he has a good running back. Well, because his team actually runs the football. Like, whatever. So it is what it is. I get it. JV says, can we really call Joe elite? Now, look, I will not go as far to troll to the point to say that he's not an elite quarterback. He is an elite quarterback, but he is not even close to being as accomplished as the other elite quarterbacks in the NFL. That's why I think Joe Burrow's career is a little overrated. I mean, we want to talk about, and I've used this line before. Joe Burrow has turned around the Cincinnati Bengals organization. How? He's 7 games above 500. The Bengals have, since they've drafted Joe Burrow, they have only won 7 more games with him than they have lost. How is that turning it around? Andy Dalton had the same winning percentage in Cincinnati. Now, I will take Joe Burrow over Andy Dalton 8 days a week. I'm not saying Andy Dalton's better than Joe Burrow, but this idea that the Joe Burrow era has just been something so magical, that's not true. Joe Burrow has been phenomenal from a talent perspective, but I don't think he's elevated the Cincinnati Bengals. What does he because they had one great season where they went to the Super Bowl and lost? They have gotten worse and worse and worse each season. Not a hot take. That's a fact. They have not made the playoffs in 2 years. Not a hot take, not an opinion. That's a fact. Joe Burrow has not won a Super Bowl MVP or an MVP, hasn't been to multiple Super Bowl. That not an opinion, fact. Lamar Jackson, multiple Super Bowls, fact. Josh Allen just won a Super Bowl without a true number 1 wide receiver, fact. Patrick Mahomes, I don't even think we need to go there. I think his career is well spoken for. Jalen Hurts has been to multiple Super Bowls, multiple conference championship wins, won a Super Bowl, outperformed Patrick Mahomes in both Super Bowls, Super Bowl MVP now. And you got Joe Burrow.
Playing in Baltimore for the 4th straight primetime year isn't ideal. Maybe we could get one of those in Cincinnati next year.
Maybe.
Please.
Maybe. David Shaw says, what has Josh Allen won? When did Josh Allen win a Super Bowl? I'm talking about the individual accomplishments of all these elite quarterbacks. They all have something that Joe Burrow doesn't. I never said Josh Allen doesn't have a Super Bowl. Josh Allen has an MVP, though. Josh Allen has a reliable track record of not being injury prone and always out there, always reliable. But Joe Burrow, to me, doesn't have the right to go to the media and complain about the scheduling because he's not getting favorable primetime games. When push comes to shove, when all things are equal, if I'm in charge of scheduling and I'm looking at the superstar quarterbacks, I'm going to go to the more accomplished one. So I'm going to give more favorable layouts to Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts or a Patrick Mahomes. JV says, if you put Joe on the Bills and Josh on the Bengals become a real contender and the Bills become middle tier team. So JV, this is where you and I will split here. I think Josh Allen, I don't think Josh Allen could do any more with the Bengals. Or I think Josh Allen could do, well, I see what you're saying there. Joe Burrow doesn't make the Bills less. But Joe Burrow would go to the Bills and be less reliable because he misses so many games. Josh Allen doesn't. But the one thing I do know is if Josh Allen could put up the numbers he does without Jamar and T, he would kill. I guess I see your point to a certain extent. If you send if you send Joe Burrow to Buffalo, have we ever seen Joe Burrow win without elite wide receivers? We have not. He never won the starting job at Ohio State. When he didn't have the super elite weapons in year one at LSU, he was just an average quarterback at LSU. But when you had Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and you had NFL talent all over that offense, then he's undefeated. Then he's a national champion. Then he's a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. You know, he goes to Cincinnati. You have, at the time, you still had A.J. Green, and then you go and you get a T. Higgins. Threw for a lot. He's had weapons everywhere. You still had Joe Mixon at that time. Then year two, you go to the Super Bowl because you have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase. I mean, let's not act like Josh Allen just won an MVP without a true number one wide receiver. More with less. More with less. David Shaw says, so if Burrow had Allen's defense, does he win the MVP last year? Possibly. But at the same time, at the same time, he also has way more help than everybody else when it comes to the pass catchers around him. So I'm not going to budge on that, Shaw. We haven't disagreed on a lot in a while, but you haven't been wrong in a while, but you're wrong on this one. I never said Josh Allen won a Super Bowl. I just said Josh Allen won an MVP, which is something that Joe Burrow does not have. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. Presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Something else that Joe Burrow did weigh in on was, of course, the conversation regarding Trey Hendrickson, and that's something that we're going to jump into when we come back. That's something I was waiting to hear how he was going to address the media regarding Trey Hendrickson. Joe Burrow asked about it in the media conference earlier today. What was his response when asked about Trey Hendrickson and his ongoing battle with the front office? We'll discuss that when we come back. More of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers next. All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. 937-518-1410. 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. I was off last week when the schedule release came out. A little bummed about that. But when the schedule release did come out, the one thing I looked at for the Bengals right away was the month of September. It's very, very important for the Cincinnati Bengals to get off to a much better start than they have the last 2 years. 1-3 starts in 1-3 September starts in 2023. 1-3 September starts in 2024. And the biggest concern that Joe Burrow seems to have about the schedule when it comes to 2025 is,
playing in Baltimore for the fourth straight primetime year isn't ideal. Maybe we could get one of those in Cincinnati next year, please.
Is that? I think Joe Burrow is a hell of a quarterback. I'll never tell you that he's not an elite quarterback, but I do think he prioritizes a lot of the wrong things. He'll know more about football than I ever will, but at the same time, I do think he lacks a lot of common sense when it comes to what you truly need to be able to be successful when it comes to winning in the NFL. Now you're saying, well, this guy's been to a Super Bowl. Yes, when you had a loaded roster due to so many of your skilled players all being on rookie contracts, but who has he elevated since? He hasn't, and I think he knows that, which is why he was so desperate to push the front office to keep Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, because he knows he doesn't really technically elevate talent around him the way we see from Jalen Hurts, the way we see from Lamar Jackson, the way we see from, a guy who just won his first MVP in Josh Allen. We talked about that the last segment. So I said when it comes to scheduling, at the end of the day, when it comes to those primetime games, the NFL is always going to, in my opinion, reward the more successful quarterbacks. And the longer that Joe Burrow's career has gone on, the more quarterbacks have surpassed him. Does it mean that all these quarterbacks are better than him? I don't know about that, but the more, again, decorated quarterbacks, that list is growing and growing. That's why I talked about last year was such a bad season for Joe Burrow, despite the great statistical season he had, because there was a lot that was being thrown against the armor that is his legacy because of the fact that for the second straight season, he did miss the playoffs. Now, you could say, well, 2 years ago, they missed the playoffs because Joe Burrow was injured. Well, they were also 9-8. You missed the playoffs because of the slow start in the month of September in which Joe Burrow was your starting quarterback in 2023. Joe Burrow was also the starting quarterback for the team that was also 1-3 last season. Now, is what it is. It all comes down to, well, what about your defense? What about this, that, and the other? We always know quarterbacks always get the blame and the credit when good and bad things happen. We're not going to change the rules now because you need it to fit your narrative that, well, it's not Joe Burrow's fault. That's not the same type of pass that you as Bengals fans would give to Josh Allen or anybody else. When Josh Allen has been knocked out of the playoffs recently, or Josh Allen and the Bills have struggled in recent seasons, not one of you were looking out and saying, well, outside of Stephon Diggs, what does he have? Well, yeah, the roster's not that great because they put so much money into bad contracts on the defense, and they're just an average team. None of you ever sat back to give the Bills the benefit of the doubt. So why should I do the same for the Cincinnati Bengals? It's a results-based business. What have you done for me lately? And what Joe Burrow has done for the league lately is a whole lot of nothing. You've missed the playoffs 2 straight years. When you do go head-to-head with these better quarterbacks, you lose. Even though you play lights out, you still lose. You're going to give preferential treatment to Lamar Jackson, who's a 2-time, and I did. I think someone called me out in the chat and said that I said Lamar won. Brian on Facebook says, you said Lamar Jackson has been to multiple Super Bowls. No, he hasn't. Possibly you misspoke, but that is what you said. I'm very well aware that Lamar has not been to multiple Super Bowls, hasn't even been to one. So my apologies on that. I was talking about Jalen Hurts a little bit ago, but no, talking about the QBs that have surpassed Jalen Hurts and the Eagles blew out Joe Burrow and the Bengals last year. Although Joe Burrow put up a ton of stats and a ton of numbers, lost to Lamar Jackson twice last year. Although his numbers were better than Patrick Mahomes in week 2 last year, still lost head-to-head to Patrick Mahomes last year, just like he lost to Patrick Mahomes 2 years ago in the AFC Championship game and in the regular season the year before, this past or 2 seasons ago. Joe Burrow, when it comes to head-to-head against these other elite quarterbacks, although his numbers might be statistically better, he's not winning. He's not beating these guys, and I think that matters. So if I'm putting a schedule together and I'm looking at Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, yes, Joe Burrow went to the Super Bowl in year 2. What has he done since? Absolutely nothing. He has no individual accomplishments. He has no individual awards. They haven't made the playoffs in 2 years. Josh Allen doesn't have a Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, wins an MVP. I'm going to put Josh Allen's home games on primetime television. Lamar Jackson's won multiple MVPs. If I said Super Bowls earlier, that's probably where I said the wrong thing. I think it was Mike or whoever, Brian, sorry. Lamar Jackson's won multiple MVPs. He's going to get the preferential treatment from the league when it comes to that. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean? Like that stuff matters. Jalen Hurts, same thing, who won the head-to-head last year, who's been to 2 Super Bowls, who has won a Super Bowl, who's won a Super Bowl MVP, who has outperformed Patrick Mahomes in back-to-back Super Bowls. So that's what this comes down to. Joe Burrow begging for home primetime games instead of being worried about September shows why this team always seems to come up short, because I don't think they prioritize the right things. Joe Burrow's more obsessed with having 2 number 1 wide receivers than putting the pressure on his front office to give him a defense. Someone asked earlier, I think it was Shaw, if he has Josh Allen's defense, does he win an MVP last year? I mean, I don't think Joe Burrow thinks that, because if he did, he would be begging for a defense more than 2 number 1 wide receivers at Super Bowl Media Row. I see where you're coming from, Shaw. I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong. However, Joe Burrow, you get what you ask for. And what you've asked for is, I need my wide receivers taken care of. I need them taken care of. What would have happened if T. Higgins doesn't get a contract extension? What would have happened if the Bengals would have flubbed up the Jamar Chase situation? Joe Burrow would be furious. Joe Burrow earlier today was asked about the situation with Trey Hendrickson. I think the Bengals defense desperately needs Trey Hendrickson. I think that the Bengals desperately need to have a defense complement the offense. Otherwise, we could be looking at 3 straight years of no Joe Burrow in the playoffs. But if Joe Burrow didn't have a Jamar Chase or T. Higgins because the front office messed it up, I think he'd be pretty pissed off. Does this sound like a guy that's pissed off when asked about Trey Hendrickson earlier today?
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. You know, you guys all know how I feel about Trey. He's a great player. I love Trey as a guy. He goes out and plays well every single Sunday. He's very productive. He's a guy that deserves to get paid and get paid what he wants and what the market is. So, you know, like I said, we'll see what happens with that. But, you know, I love Trey and hope he's with us.
Oh, that's cute. You love him. That's great. That's fantastic. That's super. You're not matching the same energy. This is what I was curious about, what Joe Burrow was going to say when he was finally questioned about Trey Hendrickson. That's not the same energy that he had for Jamar and T. Higgins. He was pissed off at those interviews at Media Row. He was very angry. He was very adamant about the necessity of making sure Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were taken care of. Where's that same energy for Trey Hendrickson? Well, we'll see where it goes. Wow. Way to have his back, dude. Well, but he knows I love him. Well, not as much as Jamar and T, apparently. That's what I mean earlier. I don't feel bad for Joe Burrow. Like I see Brian getting angry here on Facebook in the chat, bringing up the defense. You know, it's all about the defense when it comes to that. You know, Brian says 25 other teams would trade their quarterback for Burrow. It's the defense. Don't tell me, bro. Don't yell. Don't put defense in all caps and yell at me online, Brian. Why don't you find a way to get in touch with your quarterback to remind him? This ain't on me. Joe Burrow continues to be surpassed by other quarterbacks when it comes to resumes because of his lack of fundamental comprehension of what you actually need to win football games. The Cincinnati Bengals gave him $55 million a year so that he can elevate talent. And what have they done since then? They've had to make sure that they give the talent to him to make sure that he remains the talent that he is. That's not how it's supposed to work. That's why the 49ers were hesitant to give Brock Purdy the money that they did, because they didn't want to give a quarterback money that they had to prop up. They want to give a quarterback a ton of money that they can rely on to prop up pieces around them. Patrick Mahomes does that. You lose Tyreek Hill, you go on a dynasty run. You go to 3 straight Super Bowls. You win 2 of 3. Josh Allen loses Stephon Diggs. They go on to improve the offense. They're better without Stephon Diggs somehow. Josh Allen wins an MVP. No Jamar Chase, no T. Higgins. You know, you get to a Super Bowl, yes, because of the run game, talking about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, but that run game, although very solid in the Super Bowl, it was all Jalen Hurts that made the biggest throws, that made the biggest plays to put the Eagles in position to overcome Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and they, blew them out of the stadium. So I'm with you, Brian. It does come down to defense, but don't tell me that. I know that. Joe Burrow prioritizes everything except what's actually truly needed to win football games. If Joe Burrow was truly adamant about winning football games, it would be about making sure that they improve the defense over giving him his second number 1 wide receiver. If it was truly about winning football games, he would be pissed off that you have Trey Hendrickson hijacking practices and hijacking the media because the front office just won't even communicate with them. And to be fair, I'm team front office when it comes to that. But from a quarterback perspective, you know the importance of having Trey Hendrickson on the field this season. And I just don't think that energy, I don't think the energy from Joe Burrow matches the energy that he had for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And you've missed the playoffs 2 years in a row with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You've missed the playoffs 2 years in a row because you don't have a defense. But yet you're telling the media you need T. Higgins, you need Jamar Chase. You do need Jamar Chase. You didn't need Jamar and T. That $30 million a year would have gone a long way in adding big-time weapons to that defense. And instead, you're relying on a rookie in Shamar Stewart to live up to expectations when you have so low expectations for him that the Bengals won't even pay him the same guarantees that they paid their last 2 first-round picks who were drafted well after him. You guys get mad at me for pointing out what you guys talk about with your other Bengals friends about your frustrations. You know I'm right. You just hate that I'm right. Joe Burrow will put up good numbers because why wouldn't he? He has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But when that leads to an 8-9 win season or a 10-win season with an early wild card bounce because Josh Allen has a better, well-rounded roster because Josh Allen doesn't meddle and try to be the GM, there you go. When Justin Herbert does surpass him and does ultimately win a Super Bowl or win an MVP because he doesn't meddle and try to be GM, he lets the GM and everyone put what needs to be a more complete roster around him. There you go. Jaden Daniels, same thing. Jaden Daniels, I mean, would love a Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but I think he kind of knows I need an offensive line. I need a run game. I need a defense. I need a safety. I need linebackers. I need pass rushers. Joe Burrow's obsession with fantasy football numbers trumps anything else that he needs to truly actually accomplish what Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and everyone else has. I've said before, you can call me a hater if you want, but like the Cincinnati Bengals front office is not good enough to create their own path. Like when people say, well, you know, just because everyone else builds their team a certain way doesn't mean the Bengals have to do it. The Bengals are finding their own way. In what world do you trust the front office to build a roster the Bengal way? You know, there's a reason people try to copy the model of the 49ers, and they haven't even won a Super Bowl with this group, but they're consistently in the NFC Championship game when healthy. They're consistently getting to Super Bowls regardless of quarterback because they build it the right way. The Eagles, the same thing. This is another quarterback that they've gotten to a Super Bowl with. This is the 3rd Super Bowl in the last, 10 years? Because they build their roster a certain way. The Chiefs, they lose elite playmakers, but they just keep getting back to a Super Bowl because they build their roster a certain way. And while everyone builds their roster a certain way to get to the ultimate goal of a Super Bowl, here's the Bengals over here saying defense, we don't need a defense. Run game, we don't need a run game. You know, you have the 49ers who go get a Christian McCaffrey because of the importance of the run game, they get to a Super Bowl with him. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, what do? The importance of the run game. They had A.J. Brown. They had Devontae Smith. They had great weapons galore. They had a great tight end. They go and get Saquon Barkley. And they get to a Super Bowl. They win. The run game. The Chiefs valued the run game. The Bengals are like, well, we don't need to go spend money on running backs because we don't even run the football because all we care about is passing. It's a philosophy problem. And it starts with the head coach, and it starts with the quarterback, and it starts with everyone that buys into the wrong philosophy problem. The Bengals are not a good enough organization to sit over here and say, well, we're going to do it the Bengal way. No one's copying the Bengal way. In fact, Josh Allen loves the Bengal way because, hey, Josh Allen's just going to keep surpassing Joe Burrow in the, individual award department and ultimately have a better chance at finally getting to a Super Bowl. Same thing with Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. List goes on and on. David Shaw says, speaking of front office, how about Charles Woodson being approved to be a part owner of the Browns? Yeah, I've seen the jokes about Charles Woodson owning another Ohio team. So, but yeah, that was announced earlier today, nonetheless. But all right, Chad Kinster on Facebook, on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, he says, not being a homer at all, but does Burrow not deserve any credit for putting the team on his shoulders and at least giving them a chance at the playoffs? Just curious. The Bengals did get super hot those last 6 or 7 weeks, and he was the he was the biggest puzzle piece to that run. I mean, Chad, here's the deal. I'm going to go home, and I'm not really going to do this, but I'm just saying if I go home and I light my house on fire, and then I call the fire department to come put this fire out, and then when they get there, I'm already putting the fire out. Am I a hero? I'm part of the reason that house was on fire. But am I a hero because I put it out? No, I have to take responsibility for why that fire was there to begin with. Joe Burrow has to take responsibility for why they're always digging themselves out of 1-3 starts. Joe Burrow was the quarterback for the 1-3 team 2 years ago. He was the quarterback for the 1-3 team last year. And if you can get hot and win the final 5 or 6 games of the regular season, how come you couldn't be hot and win the first 5 games of the regular season? And that's okay. I'm not challenging you just because you didn't come at me in a challenging way. It's a good point. And by the way, it may sound like I'm just burying Burrow here. Burrow is no doubt a top 3 quarterback in the NFL from a skill set standpoint. But my problem with Joe Burrow is his continued lack of comprehension of what truly matters to win in the NFL. Playing the Ravens at Baltimore, that's what he's upset about, instead of being upset about the fact that they can't beat Baltimore. And it's not because they can't beat Baltimore in Baltimore. They can't beat Baltimore in Cincinnati either. That's my point. I know people are angry at me, but I know I'm making good points. I know it because these would be the same points you would make about Josh Allen if he was saying the same thing. So that's all. I get your point. Joe Burrow's a hell of a quarterback, no doubt, but I'm not going to sit here and give him credit for putting out a fire that he was a part of starting. So there you go. JV says the Pete Carroll era in Seattle went and got beast mode and built a defense. Thank you. Another example right there. Like, yes, you need quarterback. I mean, the Tom Brady runs in New England. Tom Brady was elite and great, but they had the defenses. Look, defense wins championships. That's an old, tired expression, but it's true. It matters. And I was so dumbfounded at the Super Bowl Media Row when Joe Burrow was spending every interview second he possibly could talking about the need of 2 number 1 wide receivers when you had one of the worst run games in football and one of the worst defenses in football. I threw up the graphic about a month ago that the Cincinnati Bengals, that they passed, when you look at the pie chart of the amount of plays that they ran last year, 66% of the plays that they ran were all pass plays. And when you look at the top 5 teams who threw the most, all of them missed the playoffs last year. All of them but the Bengals didn't have a quarterback. The Bengals had a quarterback and still were throwing the ball 66% of the time. The obsession with, we have Joe Burrow, we have to throw. We have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, we have to throw. That's ridiculous. People rip on Jalen Hurts all the time. Well, he must not be that good because he has A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and yet they are the most balanced offense in the NFL from a pass run standpoint. I get you don't want to not take advantage of the skill set of your quarterback, but the only way to truly win what you need to win is to be a balanced offense. And the Bengals are so far from that. And this idea that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins move them anywhere closer to being a balanced offense and not prioritizing the run game and not prioritizing the defense is just absolutely wild to me. Sorry for ranting. It is what it is. I'm Justin Kinner. This is Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. All right. I've ranted. I've probably annoyed a lot of you. I apologize, but I'm not backing down on this. I think Joe Burrow is wrong. I think every time I hear him address the media, he's talking about all of these things that actually don't matter. He's upset for where he plays Baltimore. He's upset because they didn't get international games. He's upset because it took so long to get Jamar Chase and T. Higgins done, but he's not upset that they don't have a run game. He's not upset that after 5 years, 6 years in the league, they don't have an offensive line that's functional yet. He's not upset that after missing the playoffs the last 2 years because of how bad the defense is, he's not upset that they haven't addressed that. They weren't aggressive in free agency. They took a risk and they didn't have a very good draft. He's not upset about any of that. But he's upset about Baltimore and where he plays them in prime time. He's upset about international games. What? Guys, like Bengals fans, I think if you get your hatred for me and you put it aside and you just listen to what I'm saying, I think you can comprehend why that's a problem. When your own quarterback doesn't prioritize what you truly need to prioritize to win football games, how can you expect anything different this season or moving forward? This is the same roster as last year. Where did they improve? They're not even confident in their first-round draft pick because they won't even give him the same type of contract that they gave their last 2 first-round draft picks, and they were picked later than Shamar Stewart. They're not doing this correctly. And I said it for years. It's easy when you're winning 2 games and you get Joe Burrow falling in your lap and you don't have to pay him. It's easy when you win 4 games and now you have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and you're not paying him a dime, and now all your money could be allocated elsewhere. I said, I can't wait to see what happens when the Bengals have to start paying people because it's all going to deteriorate. And that's what's happened. But it's one thing for the front office to deteriorate. It's another thing for the quarterback to lack the comprehension of what truly needs to go into building a Super Bowl caliber roster. Look at the Eagles. How can you watch what the Eagles have done and crack the mic and not be mad about your defense, Joe Burrow? How can you look at what the Chiefs have done over the last 3 years and not crack the mic and be upset for not even coming close to replicating what they've done? Look at the Bills, consistency. The Ravens, consistency. Even the teams that aren't winning Super Bowls, look at what their role, what their key to success is. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are always there. The Bills are always there. They're always there because they have the pieces to the puzzle that are the most necessary. Defense, run game, quarterback. And the Bengals have the quarterback, and that's it. All right, I'll step away for a few moments. I will open up the phone lines. If you want to have a discussion over the phone, we can do that. 937-518-1410. I think Joe Burrow prioritizes all the wrong things. And I think that's why when he looks around the league, he sees Josh Allen with an MVP. I think that's why he looks around in the division and he sees Lamar Jackson with 2 MVPs. I think that's why he looks at another quarterback in his draft class that has gone to 2 Super Bowls, has won a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl MVP. You look at Patrick Mahomes. That was supposed to be a humongous, great rivalry in the NFL, and it's slowly dying because, well, Patrick Mahomes is doing all the work, and Joe Burrow puts up good numbers, but doesn't carry his weight. I think there's a reason everyone else is surpassing him in the awards department, in the individual success department, and the team success department. It's because they don't meddle where they don't need to, and they prioritize what needs to be done to win games, and he doesn't. But sorry, you have to play Baltimore in primetime. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. The Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, that's where you could watch the show every day live and interact in the comments section. So when you hear me all of a sudden out of nowhere, just yell someone's name and react to something. It's because I'm reading the chat as the show's going along and interacting with you guys that way. Chad, I've had a few back and forths with him. Jason Pruitt says that, and let me reset the stage here. So, and we're done with the Bengals. I know you're probably tired of me just beating up on your team, but I just feel like for a team that's missed the playoffs the last 2 years, I understood it. Like when they were getting to the Super Bowl and they were back-to-back AFC Championship games, and I was finding things to complain about. I understood why you guys got mad. I had bosses tell me to dial it back and all that stuff. That's great. But what I also told my bosses recently is you're not going to tell me to dial it back when it comes to a team that's missed the playoffs the last 2 years, that has continued to have, horrible drafts and lack of effort in free agency. I think the criticism is fair. And I think that a lot of Bengals fans, most would agree, the super passionate ones will not, because they just hear someone talking about their team. And I've always said sports fans are like parents. A parent will look down at their baby and think they have the cutest baby in the world. But that baby, more times than not, sometimes isn't very cute. No one ever thinks that their baby's ugly. I don't have kids, but I've never come across parents that say, oh, man, look at my ugly little baby. They don't do that. They get real defensive, even though if you're pointing out the flaws of that child, which makes you a horrible person, by the way. But if you're pointing out the flaws of the child, you may be right. That nose might be a little too far over to the right. Maybe the eyes are, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with your baby. That's your baby. But no one thinks they have an ugly baby, and it's the same thing with sports teams. No one thinks they have a bad sports team. They get real defensive. It is what it is. So I appreciate those who don't get super defensive and at least are willing to have the conversation. Jason Pruitt talks about the Bengals and says you have to have a decent defense. Bengals can score 30-plus a game, but when the defense gives up about the same, that's a huge, huge problem. Have to put money on the defense. Some of these complaints aren't just always about Burrow. It's about the Bengals in general. My problem with Joe Burrow is like, and this is where I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I loved what he did at the Super Bowl. When he went to the Super Bowl and went on every radio show or media TV show possible to basically put the front office on blast, I thought that was great leadership. I always call for that. If you are a face of a franchise, I think you have the responsibility to do that from time to time. That was why Reds fans hated me for so long, because I was always frustrated about Joey Votto. If you guys remember when Phil Castellini dropped the famous line of "Where are you going to go?" and Reds fans are pissed. I was pissed. We were all pissed. We couldn't believe that he was basically mocking us because of our frustration for their lack of effort and willing to financially invest into putting a contending team on the field. We had suffered through multiple rebuilds in about a 10-year span, and just when they would finally start to get some good players like Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker, and you would add free agents like Nick Castellanos and others, instead of keeping them, you moved on from them. You get a Luis Castillo, you move on from them. People were pissed off. And then you had the owner's son mocking the fans. I want to turn to the face of the franchise and feel like that guy has my back. Joey Votto was nowhere to be found. He was just doing TikToks the whole time. So I voiced my displeasure with that. I said Joey Votto has a responsibility as, at the time, the face of the franchise, to speak up and put the pressure on the front office. Bengals fans, you loved watching Joe Burrow on those shows, on the washing machine that he did, right? They call it the washing machine. You just, the car wash. I'm sorry. They call it the car washer. You're just going to go and just hit every single show possible. That's what Bengals fans loved it. Why did you love it? Because you felt like, man, he wants what we want. You can't question what Joe Burrow wants because he's telling you what he wants, and he's only doing it because he feels like the front office isn't listening and he knows he's going to put the pressure on them. I thought that was great leadership. I always got mad at Joey Votto for not displaying that same type of leadership. I got buried for that. So I'm defending Burrow in that regard, saying I love what Burrow did. I love that Burrow put the pressure on the front office. My problem is when Joe Burrow tells you what he wants, what he's not telling you, or what he's telling you seems to be wrong. He's not prioritizing the actual things you need to win football games. How can you sit there and waste all your media time telling the front office how much you need Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and not use that same mic and that same airtime and platform to stress the significance and importance and urgency of improving the defense, when that is honestly why you missed the playoffs the last 2 years? Hell, even the year that he got hurt in week 11 2 years ago, they still could have made the playoffs. He won 9 games. If Joe Burrow would have won one more game in September, The Bengals make the playoffs even without him. But the defense was a problem that season. It was definitely a problem last year. I don't understand how you could continue to pound the pavement and say, we need T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. We need him, we need him, we need him. And I don't deny that you need pass catchers, but you don't need T. Higgins over linebackers. You don't need T. Higgins over elite pass rushers. You don't need T. Higgins over defense. You lose T. Higgins and your offense takes a step or two back, that's great, because the defense is also going to put up more resistance against your opponents, and that's less plays you have to make up now. That's less scores you have to make up now. Now you can go out there, ground and pound, run the football, count on your defense, beat teams deep with Jamar and complementary wide receivers, but there was no urgency from Joe Burrow. And hell, even when he addressed the Trey Hendrickson thing earlier, it was just very, we'll see how it pans out. There was no urgency in Joe Burrow's voice. There was urgency. When Joe Burrow thought he was about to lose his 2 meal tickets, when he thought he was about to lose his 2 wide receivers, or at least T. Higgins, man, he panicked. Joe Burrow was hitting every media show possible. You're literally about to lose your number 1 defensive player. You're not just your best defensive player, one of the best defensive players in the entire league. And the only thing he has to say about that is, well, we'll see what happens. I don't know what you want me to say. If you missed that earlier, here it is.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. You guys all know how I feel about Trey. He's a great player. I love Trey as a guy. He goes out and plays well every single Sunday. He's very productive. He's a guy that deserves to get paid and get paid what he wants and what the market is. So, like I said, we'll see what happens with that. But I love Trey and hope he's with us.
Where was that energy back in February? Were you going on the Rich Eisen show? Were you going on First Take? Were you going on all of these sports talk shows, radio and TV, and saying, Joe, what do you think about the Bengals? Are they going to get a deal done with Jamar Chase and T? Where was that energy? Where were you saying, well, we'll see how it goes. Jamar knows I love him, so hopefully he's still here. T. Higgins, he knows how I feel about him. He plays hard. We'll see how it goes. No, there was no we'll see how it goes when it came to the possibility of losing those two. You were on a mission. You're not on a mission for Trey Hendrickson. You're not on a mission to improve the defense. You're not on a mission to improve the run game. Well, at the end of the season, when you miss the playoffs for the 3rd straight year, remember what you prioritized in the offseason, because it wasn't the actual pieces that you truly needed to win. The Bengals are going to get Jamar done. Joe Burrow didn't need to go do a media tour to get the Jamar Chase thing done. He wanted T. Higgins because he needs elite weapons for him to be elite. That's why he was panicking. His meal tickets were about to be split up. We've seen that the Bengals offense, how bad it was without T. Higgins, because in my opinion, Joe Burrow doesn't elevate talent. That's not a hot take. It's true. I watched, again, last thing on this, I watched Tyreek Hill leave the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs go to 3 straight Super Bowls. Yeah, well, he had the tight end. He had Travis Kelce. Yeah, and Joe Burrow would have Jamar Chase. You think that you only need one really good pass catcher to continue winning? You act like losing Tyreek Hill is just no big deal at all. They went to 3 straight Super Bowls after losing, at that time, the number 1 wide receiver in football. It wasn't ideal to lose Tyreek Hill, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he elevated talent around him. That's what he does. And it's Josh Allen. That you lose Stephon Diggs, one of the top wide receivers in football, your true number 1 wide receiver, and you got better because you elevated talent around you and you won an MVP, but you have Joe Burrow begging and pleading, I need T. Higgins. No, you don't. You wanted T. Higgins. And the fact that you said you need him is actually more concerning than saying you want him. There you go. All right. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. The Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman joined us on the show earlier today. We talked about Pete Rose. We talked about the Reds' 5-game win streak. We're going to get into the Reds more coming up here in just a moment. But we'll get to that coming up here in just a little bit. I know that says 4:25. We'll have the Marty Brennaman interview coming up. We're going to push that back a bit. But the Marty Brennaman interview earlier today, here's just a brief snippet from it. If you missed it, we have the whole thing coming up here for you. Had a chance to ask Marty about his thoughts on the Pete Rose situation as a whole, how it was handled, and how he sees this ending as far as the ultimate goal of getting Pete to the Hall of Fame. Here's Marty Brennaman on our show earlier today.
I think it's very hard to overcome the frustration about the way the game has handled this whole thing. I'm always enthusiastic and encouraged by people who are transparent because in most cases they feel comfortable in their own skin, and if they're transparent about things, at least they're shooting from the heart. In this case, I think the commissioner, who I'm not a huge fan of and never really have been, I think he's an elitist. I don't know that when he has to make a tough decision, he makes right decisions. And I think that, as you mentioned a moment ago, Pete dies in September, and 5 or 6 months later, whatever the case might be, all of a sudden on a Tuesday morning, they proceed to announce that he's off the suspended list, along with Shoeless Joe Jackson and probably some other people who will not be affected by this. So I've got a problem with that. And I also caution fans, and I know I'm speaking to Pete fans. He's off the list and he's eligible, but I think it may be a tough road to hoe to eventually get the vote necessary in the fall of 27 from the 16-member committee that will be voting on such things. Hopefully it'll go through without a problem, but I think that there still could be some rough road to hoe down the road.
That was Marty Brennaman on our show earlier this afternoon, and we will have that full interview. I mean, it's about 35 minutes with the Hall of Famer. We talked everything under the sun with him coming up. He shared the story of, like, we knew one of my favorite stories from this interview that you're going to hear. We knew that Marty played a role in the Reds connecting with Terry Francona, but he pulled the curtain back and kind of gave us the step-by-step process and just how Terry Francona became the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. And Marty played a huge role in that. So we knew that, but like, as far as the step-by-step in the process of kind of who connected whom and how it all went about, I thought was pretty interesting. And Marty shared that, and we have that coming up for you later on. But he didn't hold back on Pete. He kind of gave his thoughts too on what it meant to be down on the field at Pete Rose night last Wednesday on May 14th for Pete Rose night at the ballpark when they were playing the White Sox, and he got to MC the Q&A session with the Reds Hall of Famers like Barry Larkin or Davis and some of those guys, and just Pete's closest friends. Just really cool stuff, because Marty wasn't just the broadcaster of the Reds for decades and decades. I mean, some of his closest friends, and he shared that earlier, that there's players that he called games for, and then there's some of his closest friends in the world, guys like Joe Morgan, guys like Pete Rose, guys like that. And that meant a lot to him to have a chance to be a part of that. And he complimented the Reds and all that. So great interview, conversation. Francona talked about Francona, talked about Pete Rose night, talked about MLB reinstating Pete Rose and some of the roadblocks that could exist ahead for Pete Rose getting into the Hall of Fame. He touched on it all. Plus, the Reds have won 5 straight. What's the likelihood that this team actually really has figured it out? Marty weighed in on that too, but we're going to weigh in on that when we come back. The Reds have won 5 straight. They obviously avoided the sweep against the White Sox. They took all 3 against the Guardians in a convincing fashion last night, a 7-1 win over the Pirates. And the Reds go for the series win tonight, Game 2, with Nick Martinez on the mound. Freddie Singer will look to close out the Pirates series tomorrow, with the Chicago Cubs series looming at Great American Ballpark coming up later on this weekend. Game 2 tonight, Game 3 tomorrow, off day Thursday. Game 1 with the Cubs on Friday night. Hunter Green, after a short stint on the IL, has been announced as coming back, and he will be on the mound Friday night against the Chicago Cubs. And that's what makes this series so important. The Reds cannot take their foot off the gas. Games 2 and 3 coming up. Game 2 tonight. And we'll talk about the importance of that when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll be right back.
Are you involved with a school or charitable fundraiser that holds an
All right, and we are back. I am the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We are brought to you by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. We were supposed to have the Marty Brennaman interview for you here going on now. We're going to push that back to hour number 3. So we'll get to the Marty interview at 5:15. We'll have that for you. 5:15, the Marty Brennaman interview from earlier today that we played a soundbite of earlier this afternoon already. So we'll have that coming up for you shortly. Let's talk a little Reds, though. The Cincinnati Reds take care of business against the Pirates in game 1. And I think one of the first comments of the show was Ron saying, well, it's the Pirates. You're supposed to beat the Pirates. You were right. The Reds are 25-24 right now. Okay, the Reds are 1 game above 500. Not bad considering that they were just 4 games under 500 last week. But 25-24, 3.5 games back in the division. And as far as the wild card goes, 3.5 games back there as well. They're 3.5 games back in both. And the chances of them winning the wild card, as we discussed yesterday, are very slim. I think that the only path to the Reds making the playoffs is going to be to winning the division. And winning the division is going to come down to obviously winning division games, but obviously beating the team that everyone has deemed the favorite to win the NL Central, the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs are coming off of an interesting loss last night, a game that should have been a win, and that's what, against the Marlins. I mean, the Marlins come back and win in the 9th and just kind of break the hearts of Cubs fans last night, but that was a huge win for the Reds because while the Reds won their 5th straight, the Cubs had a collapse, and that led to the Reds, making up an entire game in both the wild card and the NL Central. So we're throwing the wild card out. The Reds, the Reds are not the New York Mets, who are 10 games above 500. The Reds are not going, to compete with the San Diego Padres or even the Giants, even though they've technically competed with them. But I mean, competing record-wise, it just seems the Reds are too inconsistent for me to say and feel confident that they're going to be able to keep pace with the Diamondbacks, with the Giants, with the Padres. They're going to be able to keep pace with the Philadelphia Phillies and the New York Mets. I just don't see how that's going to be the case. And let's not close the door on the season, of course, for the Atlanta Braves, who, just like the Reds, are currently 1 game above 500, and they're going to be getting some weapons back. They just brought back one of their top pitchers. Acuna is going to be back soon. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. They actually have a chance of getting better. So keep that in mind. The thing that's interesting, so with that being said, winning the division is very important, which makes this series, which makes the Pirates way more important than what you guys want to give them credit for. The Reds have a problem, and they have a habit of playing down to the caliber of the talent that they're going up against. They play down to the level of their opponent. Now, the Reds have swept the Pirates already this season. In fact, they're 4-0 against the Pirates and have a chance to improve to 5-0 tonight, go 2 games up in this series, win the series, and have a chance for a sweep tomorrow. But the bottom line is that what this series has presented, and I talked about this in hour number 1, when we talk about football, when we look at the football schedules, we'll talk about trap games. Like, for instance, let's go through this. So the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, I'm trying to look for a trap game scenario for them as we sit here, right now as we go through this. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to be playing the why can't I find a trap game scenario for them? Their schedule is actually kind of it's pretty tough nonetheless. But let's go ahead and label the New England Patriots, who I think are going to be a better team, but the Bengals should be significantly better than the New England Patriots, right? They're going to play the Baltimore Ravens November 27th. That's that Sunday night. That's that Sunday night game that Burrow was crying about earlier that I played the clip for you. The Bengals have the Pittsburgh Steelers on November 16th. They have the Ravens on November 27th. They're going to be playing the Patriots on November 23rd. It's a boring 1 p.m. kickoff time. And they have that big rivalry showdown with the Ravens the following week. That Patriots game is a trap game. The Bengals know they're better than the Patriots, even though they shouldn't think that because they did lose to the Patriots last year, who had the worst record in football, or second worst, whatever it was, third worst. That's a trap game. We talk about it all the time. When you have to play an opponent that is not very good, that doesn't demand all of your attention, you're looking ahead to the game that actually matters, that actually carries weight. It's a trap game. We don't talk about those things in baseball. The Pirates are a trap, not game, but a series. This is a trap series because that Cubs series this weekend, it's for all the marbles. It's for it all. Now, it's not for a playoff spot. It's not for a division championship. But to me, the series with the Cubs this weekend, if they don't beat the Cubs this weekend, I give them a 0% chance of actually making the playoffs and winning the division. Now, I've made that claim before where it felt like the season was kind of unraveling, and it was. But I do think that the Reds have won 5 straight games and have made up 1 game, and it took the Cubs collapsing against the Marlins for them to make up that game. Otherwise, the Reds, over a 5-game win streak, would have made up ground by a half a game. You're not going to do well in the wild card. I don't see the Reds, getting into a wild card spot, and I think the division is going to be tough as it is. But when you have 6 games with the Cubs over the next 10 days, or at least over the 10-day stretch starting Friday, that's an opportunity for the Reds to do a ton of damage. And you have to have confidence heading in there. And the fact that you've won 5 straight, you have a sweep over the Guardians, you could potentially sweep the Pirates, at the very least take 2 or 3 into that Cubs series. I think that is ginormous for this organization, for this team, for this unit that is trying to find their footing. The fact that the season was unraveling a week ago, and here they are riding a 5-game win streak, sweeping the Guardians, and have a chance to win the series tonight. The amount of momentum that they could take into that Cubs series with Hunter Green coming off of the IL, by the way, they weathered the storm. They weathered the storm without Hunter Green. They did it. And they get him back on Friday. And I think you need to maximize the opportunity. You have the Cubs at home. You have Hunter Green, your Cy Young capable, your Cy Young capable starting pitcher, returning off the IL on Friday night. The timing cannot be any better. With the Chicago Cubs in town, the division-leading Chicago Cubs, who you've made up ground in the standings, do not let these next 2 games prevent that series from having the significant magnitude that it deserves. I don't know the last time the Reds had a series that had me as locked in as what I am for a series like they have with the Cubs this weekend. That all goes out the window if they stub their toe against the Pirates in games 2 and 3. They have to take care of business tonight. And if you have, and let's be clear, if you win tonight, people say all the time you can't expect them to sweep a team. I expect to sweep because I expect to win tomorrow in the afternoon. Andrew Abbott's going to be on the mound, or Brady Singer's going to be on the mound. He's been phenomenal, one of the better pickups in the offseason, as we've discussed. But keep that momentum going. You have an off day on Thursday. Empty the chamber. Play everyone's available that day. Get every piece of the bullpen ready. Throw in anybody. It is so important to come away with the series win against the Pirates. And it's the Pirates, but it's not about the Pirates. It truly is about the Reds. It's about dominating an opponent that you should, giving yourself that confidence back that you lost, and putting yourself in a position to beat a team that you're capable of in the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs are one of the best hitting teams in baseball, but they don't have starting pitching. The Reds' offense at times, their bats, they disappear. They fall asleep a lot, but their pitching can neutralize the hitting of the Cubs. The pitching for the Cubs is not great. There's capable hitters in this Reds lineup. I actually think that the Reds, they don't match up as poorly with the Cubs as what you guys want to think. The Cubs are going to win a lot of games because they take advantage. They're not like the Reds. I know they're coming off a tough loss against the Marlins last night, a game that they should have won, but that's the pitching deficiencies right there. But with the amount of runs that they score, they're going to be in position to win a lot more games than the Reds, more times than not, but they're vulnerable because their pitching's bad. The Reds are vulnerable because they can't put the ball in play very often, but they're always in position to win games because of that pitching. Very, very good hitting team that can be neutralized by the pitching of the Reds. The Reds have capable hitters going up against average to bad pitching for the Cubs. I think it's a formula for not success, like I'm guaranteeing it, but I like the Reds' chances against the Cubs this weekend. I like, as long as they have the right head on their shoulders, coming off of a series against the Pirates that they dominate following a sweep over the Guardians, I feel pretty damn good about the Reds' chances, especially at home. City Connect night on Friday night. The energy at the ballpark, it's going to be unbelievable, but it will only be as big of an opportunity as it could possibly be if you take care of business against the Pirates. And the Reds will have a chance to take the series tonight, game 2 against the Cincinnati Reds. After getting the win last night, 7-1, the final. The lineup for tonight, we discussed the lineup in the opening hour, but as we sit here right now, it came out earlier this afternoon. The Cincinnati Reds, as far as the lineup is concerned, it came out about an hour ago. TJ Frieda will start and lead off in center field. Batting second and at third base is Espinal. Shortstop, batting third, Ellie De La Cruz. No surprise there. In the cleanup spot, batting fourth and in left field is Austin Hayes. Spencer Steer will bat fifth and get the start at first base. The designated hitter, your starting catcher, but not starting catching tonight, Tyler Stevenson. Batting seventh, Jose Trevino. He'll be catching behind the plate tonight. Batting eighth will be Matt McClain, who will get the start at second base. And Joe, the newly acquired outfielder from the Padres, he'll be in right field tonight. Nick Martinez will be on the mound. Nick Martinez has been on a tear as of late, and they're going to need that hot pitching to continue. I saw a stat, or I heard a stat tonight or last night during the broadcast. If you guys watched it or listened to it, I think you guys heard it on the broadcast, that the Pirates have gone 24 straight games without scoring more than 3 runs. I mean, we've talked about the struggles that the Reds have had offensively. 23 or 24, whatever it was, 20-plus straight games of not scoring more than 3 runs is pretty damn tough to do. That's not a good lineup. And the Reds have the pitching to neutralize that bad lineup. Guys need to step up like they did last night. Big-time multi-hit nights from obviously Ellie De La Cruz, Gavin Lux. We've seen the tear that National League Player of the Week. Benson has been on, got out his first couple of bats, but was able to get that extra base hit late, get that double. The Reds have become a very good extra base hit team this season, which is good because it's confusing though too. I think they're they're 10th. They're 10th in Major League Baseball in total home runs hit. They have hit the 10th most home runs in Major League Baseball last night. But so they've hit the 10th most home runs in Major League Baseball. But when you watch them, guys, do you get the vibe that you're watching one of the best power hitting teams in baseball? Because I don't. But they're the 10th best home run hitting team in baseball. Last night, they had 12 hits. They put 7 runs up on the board. Not one of them a home run. All of them extra base hits. Advancing runners, bringing runners in, working the count, exhausting pitchers. I mean, they dominated the Pirates last night, and I expect them to do the same coming up here later on this evening. 6:40, the first pitch. 6:10, pregame coverage begins. Again, Nick Martinez on the mound. The Reds have won 5 straight. They look to extend it to 6. 6 straight wins would mean a series win for the Reds over the Pirates and a chance to sweep tomorrow afternoon. The Reds will play at 12:35 tomorrow afternoon. 12:05 pregame coverage begins as well, but they got to get through tonight first to go for the sweep tomorrow afternoon. An off day on Thursday, game 1 against the Chicago Cubs coming up on Friday night. Hunter Green going to be on the mound for that one. Of course, he's been on the IL for the last 3 weeks, and he comes back again. He left the game. I can't remember which it was, at the Nationals. I don't remember which game it was that he left, but it was a couple weeks ago. Might have been the Cardinals. I think it was the Cardinals series, but he left the game, strained, just discomfort in the groin area, has been able to rest that over the last just under a month, and he's ready to rock on Friday, and the Reds need him. The Reds need their ace to set the tone against one of the most explosive offensive units in baseball and the Chicago Cubs on Friday. And if they could do that, and the momentum from the last couple of series carries over into the lineup with the big crowd on hand Friday night at GABP, I like the Reds' chances to take this series against the Cubs. You beat the Pirates, sweep the Pirates, and you take 2 or 3 at the very least from the Cubs this weekend. Much different vibe on the season. I think this is an important week coming up, an important stretch. I think it's a great opportunity to get people to buy back into this team. All right, hour number 3 coming up. I do have a question. If the Reds sweep the Pirates and take 2 or 3 from the Cubs, is that what it's going to take for you to buy back in? Are you starting to buy back in now with this little hot streak that they find themselves in? Are you believers at all? Or is there nothing that they can do? I am curious. What do the Reds have to do over the rest of the course of this week for you to buy back in? Sweep the Pirates, take 2 or 3 from the Cubs, just beat the Pirates and the Cubs. What do the Reds need to do to get you to buy back in? 937-518-1410. We'll keep the phone lines open. Hour number 3 coming up. We will have the Marty Brennaman interview around the corner as well. More of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers next. right, we welcome you back. We got Reds baseball coming up here in just a little bit. 6:10 pregame coverage begins with the 6:40 first pitch, game 2 between the Reds and the Pirates. Reds 7-1 final last night. That was their 5th straight win. They look to go for a series win tonight. They have a big series with the Cubs that gets underway this weekend at Great American Ballpark. Hunter Green makes his return. Excuse me. Hunter Green makes his return on Friday night. His return could not come at a better time, to be honest. I think the Reds were a little bit more precautionary with them, pretty cautious with how they handled his absence over the last couple of weeks. But this isn't a shot at Hunter Green, but this just speaks to the depth that the Reds have when it comes to the pitching department. Did you even notice that he wasn't out there? I mean, I guess technically you could say yes on those couple ugly outings with Chase Petty. But, I mean, outside of that, this Reds pitching staff has been phenomenal. The way that Terry Francona utilized the bullpen, handled the pitching, pretty dang remarkable. And we're going to talk about that with Marty Brennaman coming up here around the corner, our conversation with him. Marty highlights, one thing that Elliot asked him on the show earlier today was, are there noticeable differences with a Terry Francona led group versus a David Bell led group? And to be clear here, this was not a shot at David Bell or bearing David Bell. It was just talking about the significance of having Terry Francona managing this team. And this is something that you'll hear in the interview with Marty, and we will clip this and focus on it more on tomorrow's show. But I thought Terry Francona, that this was the first weekend where I truly felt the Terry Francona presence. Terry Francona made playoff decisions this past weekend. To use Pagan 3 straight games, you don't do that in the regular season. David Bell, there's no way in hell he would have done that. I think they used Santillan in 2 of the 3 games this past weekend, maybe all 3. I'd have to go back and look. But managers don't do that. Everyone follows the rule of a lot of managers today will manage the 162 game schedule versus managing the situation. Terry Francona this past weekend, he managed the situation. He knew that the season was slipping away. You dropped 2 or 3 against the White Sox. Big series with a good team in one of the best teams in the American League, a team that made it to the AL Championship Series last year. His former team, he knew how important this series was. You drop 2 or 3 or get swept against the Guardians, fans will give up on the season. It'll be very hard to win anyone back. And the way he managed this past weekend, with the bullpen, it was just unbelievable, especially with the use of the opener. This was the first weekend where I felt Terry Francona won the Reds games. And not that he hadn't been doing it before. And I don't think a manager always has an impact on every game, but there are certain stretches where you look at a manager and say, okay, this is that fork in the road moment. And the way that he utilized his pitchers was pretty cool. Going to Santillan 2 or 3 games straight. Same thing with Pagan. I think that's vital for a manager who just comprehends the situation at hand. Could it cost you games down the road? Sure. But that was my biggest complaint about David Bell is, it was always about, well, I don't care about the now. I care about down the road. Well, down the road, games in September mean absolutely nothing if you lose the season in May. The fact that Terry Francona used the same bullpen guys for 3-4 straight games, we saw some of those arms last night. The fact that Terry Francona is managing the situation versus the full schedule, I think speaks volumes. And that's a guy that has pitched, that has managed over 3,000 games in his career. The guy knows what he's doing. And I truly felt that we experienced the Terry Francona impact this past weekend. Marty touches on that in our interview, which we'll have for you coming up here shortly. How about this? How about this news? The Ohio State Board of Trustees will meet Wednesday to vote on dozens of decisions, including whether to give an honorary Doctor of Public Service degree to NBA great LeBron James. Ohio State University plans to give LeBron James an honorary degree. And the big question I have, and I'm not anti-LeBron, I'm a LeBron guy. A lot of people are anti-LeBron. I'm not. But I hate when schools do this. It's all PR stuff. I get it. But hey, LeBron, we appreciate you for not committing to Ohio State and going to the pros when you were 18. You've done so much for us. Hey, LeBron, we appreciate that your son put us in his final 3 and picked USC over us. Here's a degree. hey, LeBron, Bryce James, we appreciate that your second son that went to college, he didn't pick us either, but hey, we're going to continue kissing your ass. Here's another honorary degree. What are we doing? You're the Ohio State University. You don't need to rub elbows with the higher ups, with the big wigs out there by giving them fake honorary degrees. Come on. You're better than that. I'm a LeBron guy. I'm an Ohio State guy, but I think Ohio State's one of those programs that they don't need to do silly stuff like this. You know, the fact that LeBron has burned Ohio State more than he has the Cleveland Cavaliers over the years. Every time you think that, man, if LeBron was forced to go to college, he would have gone to Ohio State. And I've heard that. I believe that. But he didn't. He turned down Ohio State to go to the pros. Cool. Same thing with his son. Had a chance to, play at Ohio State. He turned it down to go to USC. Okay. Bryce James, same thing. How many times is LeBron James going to burn Ohio State? And Ohio State turned around and say, here's an honorary degree. Hey, LeBron, we need one of your kids so we can be good at sports. Nope. Can't do it. Hey, LeBron, we need you so we could be good at sports. Nope, can't do it. LeBron, hey, can I get field passes to Ohio State, Michigan? Sure, here you go. Hey, can I get a fake honorary degree? Sure, here you go. You're Ohio State. You don't have to do that. Maybe I'm making something out of nothing, but I thought that was silly. I thought it was weird. Not a fan of it. Is what it is at the end of the day. But there you go. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. I don't know if you guys saw this either. North Carolina sells out its allotment of 20,000 season tickets for Bill Belichick's first season as head coach. Is there any chance that this thing works at North Carolina with Bill Belichick? Is there any chance that it works at all? Reports came out today that there's speculation that him and Jordan Hudson are engaged to be married. Not that that matters. It doesn't matter. I think it's a bad life choice for him, but I mean, whatever. I don't really care. But it just seems to be a constant distraction. I'm not a North Carolina football fan. I thought it was really cool when they got Mac Brown to be their head coach, but they didn't really. North Carolina really never did anything with it. They never maximized that opportunity. I mean, how bad of a football program do you have to be to get two legendary head coaches back to back and really have nothing to show for it? Maybe they will have something to show for it, but the excitement's there. The buzz around North Carolina football is back for whatever reason. Bill Belichick, maybe all of this noise in the offseason, which in the NFL, it's a distraction. Maybe it's PR. Any PR is good PR. I don't agree with that, but maybe it is. The fact that I feel like North Carolina is already a dumpster fire of a program because of all the mess that Bill Belichick has created with the distraction of his now possible fiance, I guess. But the fact that 20,000 season tickets for this upcoming season have been sold, which is a sellout, the full allotment of season tickets has been sold out. A lot of North Carolina fans disagree. They feel pretty excited about the prospect of Bill Belichick leading the way for North Carolina. Who knows how it's going to pan out? But nonetheless, I thought that was interesting as well. WNBA action this past weekend. I don't know if you guys heard, there was another dust-up between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And I don't know if you've heard, but just like everything, everyone's making it about everything except what it's supposed to be about, which is basketball. Angel Reese isn't criticized for anything other than the fact that she acts like a jerk 90% of the time. It's as simple as that. Just like when Draymond Green acts like a jerk, it's not for anything else other than the fact that he acts like a jerk. When Caitlin Clark was hip checked to the ground when Angel Reese wasn't even in the game last year, and she got up and cheered as if her team just made a game-winning bucket, but yet is just so confused as to why people think she doesn't like her. Whenever chance that she gets to tell the media that, hey, it's not just Caitlin Clark, it's me too. She constantly has to. That personality is not likable, and it doesn't have to do with race. It doesn't have to do with anything. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. When you act like she does, it's off-putting. There are very cocky, arrogant white people that drive people up the wall because of their personality. It's not race-related. It's just annoying personality-related. It's acting like you're better than you actually are related. It has nothing to do with anything else. And I'm getting tired of people telling us how what we think is wrong because there's underlying tones to it. No, I watch Angel Reese. She annoys the hell out of me, just like I would watch any other athlete that acts like her, no matter what the color of the skin is, and say, that athlete annoys the hell out of me. It's really that simple. I don't need to be scolded or told that I'm a certain word because I don't like Angel Reese. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Angel Reese has created her own problems. And this idea that it's everyone else that's creating her problems for her is just absolutely insane. You don't get to act that way and carry yourself that way and act like you're free from any kind of criticism. I mean, this was a simple foul that happened over the weekend, which should not have been a flagrant, by the way. Everyone's like, she's pushed her. She shoved her to the ground. Give me a break. It's a basketball play. Angel Reese says it's a basketball play after the game, but yet then why did you want to punch her for a simple basketball play? I tell you who needed punched was every single woman that hip-checked Caitlin Clark, poked her in the eye last year, all of that, when everyone was just like, oh, no, come on, you guys are overreacting. You know, everyone's protecting Caitlin Clark last year. You know, they were just simple basketball plays. I don't like poking someone in the eye purposely, not even trying to contest a shot is a basketball play. I don't think that in a dead ball situation, whoever that no-name woman was for the Sky last year that just hip-checked her in a dead ball situation, nothing going on, Angel Reese cheering on the sideline like her team just hit a game-winning buzzer beater. I don't think that those aren't basketball plays. Caitlin Clark's play was a basketball play. Oh, you're just making excuses for Caitlin Clark. No, I'm not. If facts trigger you, that's a you problem. That ain't a me problem. Caitlin Clark went at the ball. Don't give up an easy layup. Although you probably should have just let her shoot the layup. She probably would have missed it anyways, but that's besides the point. Gosh, I'm just like, it's to the point where you finally have a reason to watch this league, and now it's becoming so unbearable to watch it because of all the stupid commentary that comes around it. I mean, Ryan Clark's an idiot. I mean, the stuff that's coming out of his mouth is just so insane to me that I'm like, I'm not even going to get involved in that conversation, but it's just so silly. You give an opinion on basketball and it turns into non-basketball. It's crazy. You have a hard foul in basketball, it turns into non-basketball. It's not all Angel Reese's fault. It's the media's fault too. It's not all Caitlin Clark's fault. It's the media fault. It's the media's fault too. But I don't get why we have to handle the women's game with kids' gloves when we don't have to do that with the men's game. Don't sit there and say, well, we need to cover the women's game the way that we do the men's game. I think we do. When there's a hard foul that happens in the NBA, we highlight it, we talk about it, we talk about the motives behind it, and there's no other outside social issues that get brought into it. I know Draymond tried to do that last week when he talked about the perception and this narrative that everyone's building him up to be, when really he's the one going around kicking people in the gonads. He's the one tripping people, holding on to ankles, trying to turn them, acting like a psychopath, when really I think all of us as sports fans understand that you all need that unhinged individual on your team to be successful. I mean, the Chicago, when you look at the Chicago Bulls during the 90s, I mean, especially in that second three-peat run for Michael Jordan, what did he have? He had the psychopath that was going to Vegas in a dress and Dennis Rodman, right? There was no other implications to anyone's opinion of him other than, wow, the guy's he has a couple screws loose, but my goodness, you love him if he's on your team, you hate him if he's not. That's Draymond. If Angel Reese is on your team, you love her. If she's not, you don't like her. It's as simple as that. Cover this like you do the men's sports. When you do, you get called all these random things that have nothing to do with sports. But when there's psychopaths on men's teams and we call it as what it is, it's fine. That's sports banter. You do it for women's teams who want to be called just like the men's games, then you get called every name in the book. You can't say that about a women basketball player. Well, I thought they were just basketball players. I thought this was just about being equal. Why is it always about, we got to be covered equally, but we need to be covered differently? That doesn't make sense. You can't have it both ways. Oh, you need to give the women's game praise, but no, you can't criticize it. But you can criticize the men's game. That's fine. That's okay. But don't criticize the women's game because why? I feel like the most respect that you can give to a women's sport is to cover it the same exact way you cover a men's sport, because I don't think, at least in my perspective, I don't look at it as I'm going to cover a men's sport this way and a women's sport this way. I'm going to cover sports the same way across the board. The actions of an athlete is the actions of a person, not a female, not a certain race. It's, hey, when you act like a jerk, I'm going to say you act like a jerk. And if you are a male that acts like a jerk, you're a jerk. If you're a female that acts like a jerk, you're a jerk. If you're white and act like a jerk, you're a jerk. If you're black and you act like a jerk, you're a jerk. Everyone's just a jerk if you're a jerk. And if you're a nice person, you're a nice person. There's no need to dilute the waters here. There's no reason to make things more complicated than what they have to be. It is what it is at this point. But the WNBA that finally has something that's interesting, and the media trying to shame everybody away doesn't make any sense. After every home game for the Indiana Fever, how are you supposed to grow the popularity of the sport, or at least if every time a game is played there, we're just going to call every fan there a certain word, and then there's no proof of it. There's literally no audio clips. There is nothing out there of anything. When Angel Reese was asked about it today, got mad at the question. How do you constantly have problems and then just brush off the media like it's a problem to ask questions? Like, this is why she's unbearable. Hey, you want to bring attention to it. You want to call it out. You want to call a big group of people this particular word. But then when we ask you for more details, you brush it off. That's not how this works. You want to make a big commotion about Caitlin Clark every single chance that you get. You want to talk about it on your podcast. You want to laugh and do cartwheels when your teammates hip checker. You want to make sure you remind the media that you're responsible for the growth of the league too. You want to make it a point all the time, but then when you're asked about it, you look at the media and gaslight them like they're crazy for asking you any questions. It's unbearable. It's unbearable for me as a fan. I no longer want to be interested in this because I don't want to be scolded every time I tune into the game. I don't want to be worried that, oh man, if this player looks a certain way and I have an opinion about a play that she makes that I don't like, I'm gonna have to be worried because of my skin color that I might be called a certain word because I don't like the way she did something. That's stupid. Don't tell me that the purpose of this sport right now is to grow the sport when you're doing everything you can to shame anyone that tunes in to watch it. It doesn't make any sense. If you want the sport to be treated with the same respect as the men's game, then let it be covered the same way, because that's what's happening. People say, oh man, when a man does this, no one says anything. Are you kidding me? Have you watched what happens after Draymond Green hip checks someone into the ground or kicks them in the gonads? This idea that, men are allowed to act as violent as they want, but when a woman does it, they have an attitude problem. That's not true. Anytime there's a dirty play, I was watching the NCAA tournament. There's a dirty play. It was highlighted. Men or women, NBA or WNBA. What are we doing? This is make-believe. You're making up problems in your head, trying to be a victim when there's no victims here. Angel Reese is one of the most popular names in the country, and I'm supposed to feel bad for her. I don't. She creates a lot of her own problems. I don't feel bad for her. I don't. Is what it is. The Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll get into our conversation with Marty Brennaman, the Hall of Famer, coming up around the corner. More of the Justin Kinner Show next.
Hey, Green Gobbler here. So you've got a clogged drain in your bathroom. Water